this particular audience at a contest is going to walk away. This particular audience wants to see who is winning and who is doing better and who is not doing so well. But I think that in real life, if you're giving a speech, I think that we all know that you have to somehow interest the audience with a nice opening and with conversational style, not reading too much, but appearing to be able to give spontaneously. Spontaneity is important. Simply impromptu speeches, which is very, very difficult. In fact, that could be another element at a future contest. Well, I think that the nice opening for a speech is perhaps a joke, or perhaps a twist, or perhaps a scene setter to get into the topic, to get people's interest. I think that you sort of want to attract their attention, but you don't have to make it too dramatic an opening. You don't have to surprise them with something silly, but just some way to get into the speech. Perhaps a joke helps, not always, but sometimes. And so does a compelling message at the outset can help.
Obviously, practice makes perfect, but that's what everybody says. And so what are some things that you could do to help you improve your English? One of the weaknesses that I find with my students is they've spent a lot of time learning really difficult words. But those aren't really the words that we use a lot. And so my recommendation is, don't spend a lot of time, memorizing all these really, really rare words that you're never going to get a chance to use. Spend more time learning that common vocabulary, the vocabulary that you have to use on a daily basis. Because quotidian, which means daily, is hard to use, but daily is something that you can use easily. And so that's my recommendation. Learn the words that are more common. And then once you've got those common words, then start studying the more difficult ones. There's one that I would say avoid because it's overused. I know a lot of speech textbooks talk about starting your speech with a question. I would recommend avoiding that. That's overused and it's not interesting. Now, what do most politicians do when they start a speech? They usually start by telling a story. Again, showing their connection or sharing a connection that connects to their audience. It doesn't have to be your story. You could share somebody else's story, but if you know that your audience likes this person or would enjoy that story, it makes that connection between you and your audience. And in a speech, that's very important. You want to win your audience over.
For speaking, it's a little different than an essay because, both regards, you need to have a good hook. I think it's very popular. People want to ask a question, but in my opinion, that is not a good way to start a speech. The problem with that is when you ask a question, you don't know the answer always. And if the audience has a different answer, then they're going to get lost. So, in my opinion, make a strong statement, and for 3 effective ways to open your speech. Tell a story, maybe give a proverb, or tell an anecdote, and then use your second line of your speech to explain the meaning or significance. Because, for example, we're all familiar with the ant and the grasshopper. So you can start your speech with just a little story about the ant and the grasshopper, and then tell us the meaning, which means, be prepared for the future. And when you do that, people A, they already know the story, and so they'll listen to you because they want to see what you're going to say. And B, you give your meaning, your interpretation, and then go into your speech. And I think that's a very effective way to begin. I've been teaching in Korea for 10 years, 8 years at the university level, and my students often are a little afraid to speak. They're scared of being embarrassed and making a mistake. We all make mistakes, and you can't be afraid of the mistake. So if you want to improve your English skill, you need to practice. And I know we hear this a lot. The other thing I would say is you have to train your ears, because if you're not a good listener, it's going to be hard to be a good speaker. And people don't understand, I think, how to listen correctly. because often it comes, and even in today's contest, sometimes people put stress on the wrong part of a word. So, for example, there's a verb, record, and there's a noun, record. And if you put the stress on the wrong part of the word, it changes the meaning. And I think sometimes Korean speakers who are learning English they get angry and frustrated because native English speakers can't understand them even when they're speaking English, right? And it's because word stress. So the more you listen, the more you will understand how to correctly pronounce each word, and that will help your speaking ability. Because then you're not worrying about, am I saying it right? And the more exposed you are to different styles of English around the world, it's actually going to help you overall when you're talking to anybody, no matter which country they're from. If you're talking to a bunch of doctors, use as many difficult vocabulary words as possible. If your audience, maybe their English skill isn't as high, then you want to use some simpler vocabulary. And the other thing you have to be worried about then is pronunciation. If you're using words that you're not that familiar with, then you may put the stress on the wrong part of the word. And so you have to be careful with that.